Did you miss me? I'm back. Even though the other guy was, more talented and better looking, somehow I'm back in this seat. Greg Rakestraw along with Bob Stambazze. It is State Champs Extra Point here for the state of Indiana, presented by Lawrence Ethnological University. Thank you, Mark Forster, while I was wearing Mickey Mouse ears last week for filling in on the show. I know you missed me, right?
I did. You and Goofy and the rest of the family, I sure did well.
Well, it is good to see my cousin when I get down to Orlando. There is no doubt about that. Where were you on Friday night?
Friday night, we were at Tippecanoe Valley High School as Southwood went up there to try to win the outright championship for the TRC, which they did, winning 21-7. But I'm telling you, it was a heavyweight prize fight. It was punch, counter punch. It was a slobber knocker from kickoff to go, and mistakes and capitalizing on mistakes led Southwood to the victory of 21-7.
That's 3 consecutive conference crowns for Southwood, correct?
Outright.
And the TRC is kind of a blend of 1A, 2A, 3A schools, correct?
They are, with Valley being the 3A and also Peru and Mechanical. So, yeah, they had to beat all those teams to get to the title undefeated.
I'm going to see how good my memory is. The names of Trexler and Blair. Did I name the guys correctly from 2 years ago?
You did.
Okay.
You did.
So what is impressive to me about this, and having grown up, not playing football at a 1A school, but attending a 1A school, is you have these great bursts of talent, and then you kind of go back down, for the next year or two before it builds back up again. For a 1A school to know they had to kind of, rearrange the deck chairs after 2 years ago, having a great combination football and basketball run, to go 9-0 in the regular season 2 years later, that's really impressive.
It's been a great mix of having quality players up front on the line. The Hogs have really been good. Then when they had to replace 2 or 3 Hogs, they were able to do that. And when you have your key players returning in the backfield, that has just made the blend here, transition here, and it's scary. They're young again.
So Southwood finishes the regular season as one of 3 unbeaten teams in Class 1A. Lutheran, South Adams, Southwood, that trio. We're going to talk at least more about 2 of those teams coming up here in a little bit. Now, as far as my game that I had on Friday night, it was the most fitting ending to the Mick on ISC you could have, in that it was a 4-way tie for the conference championship at the end of the season. Ben Davis, barring one bad half against Lawrence Central in Week 8, they've been playing the best over the last 5 weeks, and there are these pivotal moments that happen during the course of any game or a season, and then it's up to your team to take the ball and run with it. So here's that moment for Ben Davis back in week number 5. They are up 17-14, or trailing, 17-14, and Ben Davis is kicking to try to tie the game on the last player towards the end of regulation. Kick is blocked by Warren Central. In theory, the game is over. But because it is a live ball, because the ball went backwards, and all of the Warren Central bench, half of the student body, comes onto the field, their officiating crew properly whistles, because you potentially are impeding the play to try to track down the loose ball. A sideline penalty, a celebration penalty, however you want to phrase it. Ben Davis re-kicks, hits the field goal. They win in overtime. Since then, they have beaten both Carmel and then North Central in the game on Friday night. They were up 18-0 at Lawrence Central in week number 8 and lost 23-20. If it wasn't for that loss, they'd be the sole winner of the MIC this year. But instead, North Central, part of a conference championship in football for the first time, Ben Davis, Carmel, and Warren Central all share the MIC. And in a year, Bob, where that league has never been like this before, there's no great team, there's no bad team. It's fitting that 4 teams share somehow pieces of the trophy.
As you said, for the first time in the history of the conference, this is what happened. But what you got to me, listening to everything you're saying, you got a bunch of good teams sitting right there that anybody on any day.
And I will say this, Bob, and this dates back, we're now only in year number 7 of 6A football, but let's just expand that back to 5A, because those same teams were the power brokers in 5A. I've been now covering high school football on a significant basis for about 22 years. I've never had a year where we go into the top classification and I go, I'm not sure what happens here. Maybe we had that in 2013 when Warren Central won. That Warren team went 11-3. They were 6-3 in the regular season and literally avenged all 3 of their losses in the postseason, all against McFoes, to win a championship. I think the final score was 7-6 that day against Carmel. We may have a situation like that where you're looking at a 2, a 3, a 4-loss state champion, maybe even a 5-loss state champion. Could be happening in 6A this year, because it could be from outside of the MIC for the first time. It could be anybody in 6A. 6A is going to be crazy.
Well, you know as well as I do, it comes down to adjustments and who can make those adjustments and implement those adjustments on the field.
So the two big mixed scores, again, Ben Davis beats North Central 23-7. Carmel beats Lawrence Central 20-7. But two other games in 6A certainly deserve a mention. And how about Hamilton Southeastern landing the upset? They down Brownsburg 28-25. Brownsburg now goes to the postseason at 6-3, but they've got Avon in 2 weeks, and that was a season changer right there. Of course, Avon is number 1. They were on the table finishing 9-0. But also Cathedral beat Center Grove 14-9. And again, as we transition to 5A, those top 4 or 5 teams in 5A, they are really, really good. New Pal, Valpo, Cathedral, Dwenger. I'd probably put Decatur Central right below that group. I put Concord, who beat 6A Warsaw on Friday night. The top end of 5A is going to be dynamite.
I got to ask you, how good, in all honesty, how good is Cathedral? Every week I hear we talk about them, levels are playing, who they're playing. How good do you think they really are?
I haven't seen them yet. I will see them at some point in time in the postseason. It's tough to say, just because I still don't think this is maybe as good as their best teams.
Ooh.
But their best teams were when they were at the 4A level, before you had the success factor.
Sure.
Or maybe the 2 years they moved up to 5A, where they won those titles relatively easily over LaPorte and Westfield. This was a Cathedral team that really wasn't overly talked about going into the season.
True.
And remember, if a bylaw hadn't changed, they'd be in 4A. And then they would be the definitive favorites in 4A, no questions asked. In 5A, they are simply one of 4 or 5 really good teams. New Pal is outstanding. Valparaiso is outstanding. The defending champs from 4A last year in Dwenger, maybe the best team, or at least one of the best teams, in what I think is a really good year for the big schools in Fort Wayne. And so let's put it this way. They're good enough where if they likely see New Pal in a regional, that will be an outstanding game. How about that?
There may be a few people there.
All right, so speaking of New Pal, they beat Delta 49-13, which is about what was expected. We'll talk more about Kyle Ralph coming up a little bit later in the show. Congratulations, Decatur Central. They beat Franklin 41-21 as they wrap up the title in the Mid-State Conference. Elsewhere, Elkhart Central beat New Prairie 31-28, and that is of note. This is the last year of Elkhart Central.
Right.
Central Memorial merge at the end of the school year, and there'll be one Elkhart High School playing 6A football next year. So for these kids, it's their last run together. And New Prairie was 8-0 and had beaten Penn a couple of weeks ago.
Coach Radke ranked number 1 up there in New Prairie, and this is a big upset up north in the actually central part of the state. And big upset. Going to be interesting to see how these teams bounce back and how Elkhart Central goes forward from this win.
Harrison beating Marion 49-42. That is a 5A beating a 4A. But again, what it does is it gives the outright North Central Conference championship to Lafayette Jeff. But Harrison is a team that won a football sectional for the first time last year in 24 years. The way the tournament was drawn up last year, New Pal was in the northern half of the bracket. They played Harrison in the regional. This year, New Pal is in the south, and Harrison would either feed into Valparaiso. I think they'd feed into either Valpo or Dwenger. I think it's Dwenger, in the regional. But this is a Harrison team under Terry Peebles. Bill Peebles, the head coach at Cathedral. Terry's the head coach at Harrison. I think the Raiders are set to make a pretty deep tournament run.
And the big thing that scares you about playing that team, they put a lot of points on the board.
Which is not what they've done the last couple of years. That's a little, and they did that when they lost to Lafayette Jeff. The fact they're able to kind of hang with them offensively caught a lot of our attention, and our ISC group has seen a lot of Lafayette football over the years. Okay, bit of a different. They've always played defense well. Haven't put as many points on the board. They're doing that this year, which tells me, again, I think Harrison is in that next tier, say behind that big 4 and 5A. A couple of teams I want to mention, at least that were 5A schools. Congratulations to Bloomington North. Scott Bless and his kids wrap up part of a conference championship in Conference Indiana by them beating Southport in overtime 34-31. That's a program that has struggled to keep pace with Bloomington South. They beat the Panthers earlier this year. By the way, Chittard all over Bloomington South 42-7 in a non-conference game on Friday night.
Two big ball games right there with North winning in overtime over Southport. Chittard, well, it's Chittard, and here comes tournament time. They're getting ready.
You ask me how good Cathedral is, and I go, I'm not sure they compare to their best teams. I think this Chittard team might be the best team they put together.
Really?
And they have won numerous state championships, but they've had NFL players. I mean, they got two right now in the National Football League, the Martin brothers. Zach plays for the Cowboys. Nick was in Indianapolis on Sunday with the Houston Texans as their starting center. Ryan Baker in past years has played in the National Football League, but they have some serious talent on this Chittard team. And again, now under Rob Doyle, they've opened up the offense a little bit more. To me, Chittard goes to the tournament as the heaviest favorite in any class. I think they're that good, and their schedule has prepared them that much for a tournament run.
That's unbelievable hearing that from you.
All right, so in 3A, Lewis Cass, they're not 3A. They're 2A.
2A.
But they beat West Lafayette, who hammered them a couple of weeks ago, 58-21. And for those who don't know why, they played twice in 3 weeks. So those two schools are in different divisions of their conference. But that conference feeds into a championship game in week number 9. And Lewis Cass, from a 37-point loss, turned it around to beat West Lafayette 49-42.
I said a minute ago, it's making the adjustments and then implementing those adjustments. And that's exactly what Cass did in this big championship ball game. But the thing that I look at, this is a diversified team that, as I said previously, can throw the football, can run the football, but one thing they need to really step up is stop the football, and that's going to be interesting coming up.
And Cass has no time to celebrate against West Lafayette because that other team from their county that's pretty good, who they beat in week number 1, they're waiting on them in week number 1 of the postseason. More on that in a moment. A couple other 3A scores. Again, this is a 4A team beating a 3A team. Roncalli beats Garin Catholic 49-14, and don't look now, Roncalli has figured something out. They're starting to pick up some wins. And they have, honestly, a very open path in the sectional and regional. Expect the Rebels to be playing for some time in 4A.
Do you attribute that to the schedule they play throughout the season?
I attribute to the schedule. I attribute to having good coaching. I attribute to them being a bit of a younger football team this year, but absolutely. And I'll cite an example. So I was the voice of the Rebels from 03 to 06. This example I'll cite was the year before in 02. They did not win until week 6. They didn't lose again. And they won they beat Dwenger, I believe, for the 4A 2002 state championship. They had to beat East Central in overtime at their place to get to that state championship game. They literally started 0-4, had a game canceled because of a storm in week 5, didn't win until week 6, and just kept on winning. Maybe that happens this year. I think once they get to the semi-state round, I think the level of competition picks up for them. But the draw is somewhat favorable for the Rebels to have a deep run. Other game in 3A, Gibson Southern 22, Southridge 21. Both those teams got to play catch-up to get to Heritage Hills. They're all in section number 32. Quickly in Class 2A, congratulations, Josh Edwards and the Eastern Comets. They wrap up the Hoosier Heartland Conference Championship, blanking Clinton Prairie 34-0. Eastern undefeated regular season for the first time in 45 years.
Just unbelievable, the football they played. But if you think back over the past 5, 6, 7 years, this program has been on a steady rise.
Yep.
And the athletes have really bought in. Coming from a basketball school that Eastern's been known for, the Comets, now becoming a good football school, this doesn't totally surprise me.
And by the way, Central Catholic, we've got one 1A school I want to mention before we go to our first break, beats Western, a 4A school. Yeah. So, again, that's one of the smaller programs in that league against the largest program in that league, 21-20. All of a sudden, CC is 6-3. And remember, Pioneer is not in their sectional this year, which has been the stopping point the last 3 years. So CC, not surprisingly, maybe having a deep postseason run as well. There you go, the end of the high school football regular season. When we come back, a quick look at the big matchups taking place across the state in week number 1 of the postseason, especially for the guys in 4A on down. Back in just a moment at State Champs Indiana Extra Point, presented by Lawrence Technological University.
I've always been really good at math and science, and I knew I wanted to work in healthcare, but not as a doctor. So I chose Lawrence Tech's biomedical engineering program. I've pushed myself to take internships, like this one, at a hospital in an orthopedic research lab. Thanks to Lawrence Tech's unique, hands-on style of education, I'm graduating with a published research paper and a job. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.
Welcome back to State Champs Indiana Extra Point, presented by Lawrence Ethnological University. Alongside the Baz, Bob Stambazze, I'm Greg Rakestraw. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to Mitch Early and Chris Landers behind the scenes, and thanks to our friends at the ISC Sports Network, where we film this program every Monday. It debuts every Wednesday at 5 through the various social media channels of State Champs Indiana. Now, on to the postseason. But 62 of the largest 66, there we go, enrollments in the state of Indiana have this weekend off. Nobody plays in 6A. Only 4 of the teams in 5A play. There are 32 teams in 6A. There are 34 teams in 5A. So a couple of games before everybody gets going. And basically every sectional, 1A through 6A, will have 4 teams remaining as of next Friday, November the 1st. So we will get to a 5A game at the back end of the show. Let's go straight to 4A. And how about Delta? You go from New Pal to Mississinawa for an opener. One of these two teams that's had an outstanding season goes home after week number 1.
8 versus 9.
Yep.
This is going to be a slobber knocker and a half. It's going to be played on the turf, so we don't care if it rains. Let's just go play football. But 2 very physical football teams that you're going to see here. Mississinawa really likes to control the tempo of the game. Delta likes to put points on the board. I think this is a great matchup for the playoffs starting out.
A game that we will have on the ISC Sports Network, a cross-regional sort of game and an interesting contest in week number 1. Silver Creek is 8-1. They are the largest school in the Mid-Southern Conference. They're the only 4A school in that league. They played some really good 2A and 3A competition, but not 4A competition. They're 8-1. Their lone loss was at Brownstown a couple of weeks ago. East Central is 9-0. But they're kind of in the same boat as Silver Creek. They play a lot of 3A schools. They don't play the toughest of schedules. The only difference here is pedigree. East Central won 4A 2 years ago, beaten in the regional by Evansville Central last year. Silver Creek for years was the largest school in the state that did not play football. They've been playing basically for a decade. And here they are 8-1. They're playing at 9-0 East Central. This is a really interesting game.
It's a great matchup down south, and going to be a big crowd. But not knowing too much about either team, but I do know you can't knock one thing. They both win.
Right. The Silver Creek has kind of built themselves on defense. Mm-hmm. East Central runs the football until you can't stop it, and they'll find another way to run the football on you. It's what they do. That game is on turf as well down in St. Leon. Really interesting game. We'll have that for you on the ISC Sports Network. To the northern corner of the state we go. Hobart. Talk about one of the great traditional powerhouses in Indiana high school football. They're 7-2. They're going to go play at Hammond Morton, and Hammond Morton's been sneaky good this year. They're 8-1.
Yeah, neither team ranked either when I sat there and looked at that and looking at the teams. But, you know, Hobart, the Brickies, tradition, Hammond Morton, a team you haven't really heard about a lot in football lore. So this is going to be an interesting matchup up in the region on Friday night.
Let's go to 3A. You just heard me say in the last segment, I'm all in on Chittard. Their sectional is ridiculously good. You know, you've got West Lafayette, the defending state champs. You've got Garin Catholic. You know, Yorktown 6-3. That's part of that group. Sectional 28 is Murderers Row. Well, Brebeuf might be the second best team. West Lafayette fans may like to hear that. Brebeuf might be the second best team in that group. Chittard thumped them in week number 1. Brebeuf's only other loss was to Cathedral, and they were competitive in that game in the rain a couple of weeks ago. Chittard at Brebeuf. There will be no easy games for Chittard, but I think they're up for the challenge.
Yeah, it was a 49-14 win for Chittard, but you know what? It's tournament time. I know it's a cliche, zippity-doo-dah for the records on both teams. Brebeuf's going to try to make those adjustments to implement during this game. Take the keys, stay with your goals, and go forward.
We've referenced the Mid-Southern Conference already with Silver Creek. Well, the other 2 best teams in that league, Reed Mays, perennial champs, it seems, in Brownstown Central. They are 9-0. They got to go to Charlestown, who is 7-2, and the Pirates hung with Brownstown a couple of weeks ago. 21-14 was the score when those guys played. In fact, that was earlier in the season, back in week number 2.
Yeah, let's roll the dice, match them up, and here they go. This is going to be a great sectional matchup first out.
There will not be as good of a game statewide on Friday night as Pioneer at Lewis Cass, the battle for Cass County, the 2-time defending 1A state champs. Again, life has been good to Pioneer after Jack Kaiser's departure. Pioneer lost the opener, I think, by 4. They have not lost since. Lewis Cass coming off a massive win against West Lafayette. Yeah. Now my only question is, how do you get the kids' minds right knowing hey, the next game could end your season.
Yeah, how do you get a ticket to the game? But you're sitting here, 8-1 both teams, a big win for Cass, first time out. More diversified now are the Pioneer football Panthers out of Royal Center. They're going to come at you both throwing and running. Back when they had Jack, whatever Jack wanted to do, they did. And you got also a Cass team that's always been known for running. Well, guess what? They can run, gun, and giggle too, and they'll get it out all over the place.
There's not going to be anybody in Royal Center, Galveston, or Walton.
Everybody's gone.
Ghost towns. They will all be at Lewis Cass High School on Friday night. We referenced Eastern last segment 9-0. They do not have an easy opener. They are at home, but they're playing a Lapel team that is 6-3 and knocked off a good Eastern Hancock team on Friday night.
Well, we've talked about Lapel. This is a program, once again, known for basketball, has that new school out there, and to me, it's brought a new attitude for football, and they really have built it up.
All right, Southwood is at Churubusco. So, again, Southwood beat a good team on Friday night. They get a ranked team this Friday night.
This is going to be an interesting matchup. When Churubusco lost to Eastside early in the year, they keyed on Holtz. They got him stopped. Well, no doubt about it, that's exactly what Southwood's going to do. They're going to try and stop this 1,500-yard season runner for Churubusco. Southwood, a lot of team speed on both sides of the football. Farr's doing a great job of quarterback. They got multiple different running backs. They get the ball spread out to everybody. This is going to be an interesting matchup, I think, on speed of Southwood versus the physicality of Churubusco.
Number one team in 1A all season long has been Lutheran. They are 8-0. They have to play at Sheridan. It's a good Sheridan team, but it's not your typical Sheridan defense. I think they won against Carroll Flora 64-56 on Friday night. Lutheran put up 63 against Traders Point on Friday night. Again, rarely is Bud Wright the underdog in the postseason. I think that's the case with Dave Pash's team.
You know, to me, it just may be too much physical play of Lutheran with Sheridan, but it is Bud Wright.
Right.
And he will have these Blackhawks ready to play football.
He's figured out a way to do this about 425 times at this point in his career. He'll be ready. Again, I just don't know if they have the answer for Lutheran. And finally, Milan, who's been in 2A the last several years, now in 1A, they take on Knightstown, 7-2 at 6-3. North Decatur, best team in that section, with the Milan Indians have a good squad. So there you go, a look around the best matchups, especially in 1A through 4A, because, again, it's those schools that take center stage this week. Then everybody from 5A and 6A begins their postseason run next week. There's a look around what will happen in either week 10 or week 1 of the second season, depending on how you phrase it. Now for a look at recruiting. We'll turn it over to Alan True from 24/7 Sports.
This is Alan True from 24/7 Sports with this week's State Champs Recruit Report. Indianapolis Cathedral's senior safety Shiloh Means has made his college decision. He committed to the University of Pennsylvania over several offers from the Mid-American Conference, as well as some service academies, but the opportunity to play for an outstanding academic institution was something Means could not pass up. And in him, the Quakers get an outstanding athlete. He was one of the best testers in the entire country at the opening regionals this summer, included a 3.95 shuttle at 5'11", 194 pounds. So he's going to bring some serious size and speed to their defensive backfield. Sticking at Cathedral, senior quarterback Orrin Edwards has had a really strong season, and the 6', 170-pound dual-threat quarterback has now picked up an opportunity from Louisville as a preferred walk-on. However, given the season that he's had, it is possible other schools will jump in with full scholarship offers, but for now, he has that opportunity from Louisville. And then finally, one of the state's top young prospects is Westfield defensive end Popeye Williams, a 6'2", 210-pound prospect who visited Cincinnati over the weekend and picked up an offer from the Bearcats. That is now his third offer as Cincinnati joins Toledo and Bowling Green, but he's hearing from a number of Power 5 schools, so the process is just beginning for Mr. Williams. For this week's State Champs Recruit Report, I'm Alan True.
I've always been really good at math and science, and I knew I wanted to work in healthcare, but not as a doctor. So I chose Lawrence Tech's biomedical engineering program. I've pushed myself to take internships, like this one, at a hospital in an orthopedic research lab. Thanks to Lawrence Tech's unique, hands-on style of education, I'm graduating with a published research paper and a job. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.
Welcome back. It is State Champs Indiana Extra Point, presented by Lawrence Technological University. Greg Rakestraw, Bob Stambazze, as always, with you. Time for our Spotlight segment. We'll talk about key coaches and key players and great performances this season, or especially in week number 9. And let's start with Jeff Adamson at Eastbrook. His young team, after making the 2A state finals last year but losing to Western Boone, graduated a lot off of that team, lost their first 2 games. Haven't lost since. They're 7-2.
You know, they lose to Marion. They lose to Delta, and we talked about that clear back in week 1 and week 2. Is this a team that's rebuilding? They were so young. Well,
no, they were playing a 4A schedule.
No, it's Jeff Adamson coaching football and teaching the game of football, and he's got them right where he wants them.
275 wins in 31 years. Congratulations, Coach Adamson. Kyle Ralph, new pal, has just completed a 7-year streak of being 83-4. They have not lost a regular season game since Kyle Ralph became the head coach, and I'm pretty sure they went to running clock in 8 of their 9 games this season.
How special is that, though, when you got a program and you haven't lost a game, regular season game, in 7 years? I mean, that is phenomenal, and it's something that you look down when you're a 5th and 6th grader and say, oh, by the way, we didn't lose either. I mean, it's unbelievable.
The defending state champs in 5A, they were good in football previously. Never anything like this. They are one of the best teams in the state. We referenced Indianapolis Lutheran putting up 63 points on Traders Point Christian. Marcus McFadden, 152 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns. Blake White, 17 of 21 for 332 yards. And Jalen Elliott had 104 yards receiving on 3 catches. The Saints have been so close to Lucas Oil. I kind of think this is the year they get there for the first time.
And they beat a good Traders Point team in this football game. So you look at something like this, sharing the ball around, it makes it awful tough on the defense.
Kyle Lockard of Ron College, talk about the Rebels finding their stride. He's a big part of it. School record, 208 yards receiving in the victory. That was set back in 1978. He scored on touchdown passes of 42, 57, and 63 yards from Aiden Leffler. The Rebels have it rolling come postseason time.
Great hands, great speed, great athlete.
And Gabe Urett from Lewis Cass, 28 carries, 245 yards, is again one of the biggest turnarounds you've seen. Lewis Cass beating West Lafayette.
Urett, a real classy athlete out of Cass.
And again, of Cass and Pioneer, one really good football team will not see November. That's just the nature of this time of year. Now, there is even more high school sports information, and not just about football, but other great sports as well, when you tune in to watch State Champs Indiana, the flagship program that can be seen on Fox Sports Indiana. It debuts every Sunday. It has multiple replays throughout the course of the week. And for more on this week's show, here's Lauren Plant.
Gentlemen, thank you. It's our Halloween show on State Champs. Big question, how scary would the first round of football playoffs be? Because there's always upsets, right? As far as sectionals coverage go, we'll have packages from the Fort Wayne area and the Evansville area. We've also got highlights coming up in 3A in Bishop Chatard and Brebeuf Jesuit. Really looking forward to how that one turns out. Could be a lot closer than week 1. Now in 2A, how about Pioneer meeting Lewis Cass again? Will they avenge their only loss? That's our main event in down south. Lutheran at Sheridan. That should be a doozy. It's all on State Champs this Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central on Fox Sports Midwest.
I'm on the Blue Devil football team, and that's a great place to be because other colleges wouldn't let me be both a football player and a nursing student. And just because I'm a dog on the field doesn't mean I can't take care of people. And man, do I love people. The small class sizes at LTU give me awesome access to my nursing professors. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.
Welcome back for the final time. It is State Champs Indiana Extra Point, presented by Lawrence Technological University. Again, Bob Stambazze, Greg Rakestraw with you. Thank you, Mitch Early and Chris Landis behind the scenes. And remember, this show debuts every Wednesday at 5 on the various social media channels of State Champs Indiana, plus gets a couple of replays on the ISC Sports Network on Thursday and Friday, leading up to Friday night's big game. The big game for you this Friday will be what?
We will be in Turtletown, USA. We'll be at Cherubusco on a 105.9 Vash ball game of the week as Southwood travels up to take on the Cherubusco Golden Eagles. This is going to be a dandy Friday night.
Explain to me, Turtletown, USA.
They get a turtle.
Okay.
And it's the mascot for the town, and they are just call themselves a Turtle Town,
but yet,
USA in Cherubusco.
But yet Cherubusco's nickname is the Golden Eagles.
Golden Eagles. But the town is known for turtle.
I'll write that
Put
down.
that down. And
Green
I was
Bay,
not at Disney
Titletown.
World last week, just to let everybody know.
Churubusco, Turtle Town. Okay, got it.
You heard of Titletown.
I've been
Okay.
I've been to Titletown.
Both start with a T.
I've not been to Turtletown. I'll add that to my to-do list. So with that, I've been focusing on MIC football throughout the course of the season. Well, there's no MIC games coming up on Friday night. So we expand the palette a little bit, and we go to the biggest game from an enrollment standpoint taking place in Central Indiana, one of the two biggest games in the state. Only two games taking place in 5A. Plainfield and Decatur Central, these are mid-state rivals, and as we have noted, defense has been optional all season long, if not even discouraged, frankly, in conference play. When these two teams played earlier this year, Decatur Central beat them 42-38. They've still got Tracy's on the team at Decatur Central, which means they're in pretty good shape. Head coach Kyle Enright versus Brian Woodard's Quakers. Looking forward to that matchup. You can catch that on my Indy TV 23, Comcast 81, as well as the ISC Sports Network coming up on Friday evening. Other big games that state champs will be focusing on. Silver Creek and East Central, see that on the ISC Sports Network. Pioneer at Lewis Cass, IHSAA TV has that one. Delta's at Ole Miss, Chatard at Rebuff, that too on IHSAA TV. It has been a fun regular season, but business picks up this time of year. Can't wait for it.
It's time to lock a load and keep going forward.
Alongside Bob Stambazze, Greg Rakestraw, thank you so much for joining us. We'll do it again next week. State Champs Indiana Extra Point presented by Lawrence Technological University.